The morning sun rose over the wheat fields of new harvest, painting the golden stalks in shades of amber and copper. Stood on the porch of the Colonial Administration Building, watching the combines move through the distant fields like giant metal insects. 15 years of hard work had turned this empty planet into something beautiful. 15 years of planting, growing, and harvesting had given 3,000 colonists a real home. His coffee had just started to cool when the alarm went off. Dropped the cup and ran inside. The communications officer, a young woman named Sarah, was staring at her screen with wide eyes. 3 ships had appeared in orbit, big ones, the kind that carried armies, not traders or explorers. "They're broadcasting," Sarah said, her voice shaking. She pressed a button. The voice that filled the room was cold and harsh, speaking through a translation system that made every word sound like breaking glass. "Humans of New Harvest, this is Warlord of the. We have conquered 73 worlds across 5 systems. Your planet has resources we need. You will surrender all food stores, all technology, and all vehicles. You have 3 days. If you refuse, we will take them by force and burn your settlements to ash." The transmission ended. Sarah turned to look at her, face pale. "Governor, what do? We don't have an army. We don't have weapons. The security force has 20 people with stun batons." Sat down heavily in his chair. His mind raced through the options. Call for help. The nearest military base was 3 weeks away. Even if they sent ships immediately, New Harvest would be conquered long before they arrived. Surrender. He thought of the reports he'd read about They didn't just take what they wanted. They destroyed what was left, leaving planets broken and starving. "Call an emergency meeting," said quietly. "Everyone in Haven's Rest. 2 hours. Get the word out to all the settlements." The town hall in Haven's Rest had never been so crowded. Farmers pressed shoulder to shoulder with engineers, teachers, and medical staff. Children sat on their parents' laps. The air smelled like sweat and fear. Stood on the small stage and explained everything. He didn't soften the truth. They were coming. They were experienced warriors who had crushed planets with real armies. New Harvest had no defenses, no weapons, no hope of outside help. "So we surrender," someone shouted from the crowd. "We just give them everything and hope they leave us alive." "The don't leave survivors with much," said. "They'll take our food, our equipment, everything we've built. They'll leave us to starve." Silence filled the hall, saw the despair on their faces. These were good people, hard workers who had left Earth or Mars or the belt stations to build something new. They didn't deserve this. Then stood up. She was 72 years old, her face weathered from years under New Harvest's twin suns, her hands strong from decades of farm work. Before retiring to become a farmer, she had commanded an engineering battalion in the Outer Colonies War. Everyone knew her. Everyone respected her. "Governor," she said, her voice carrying through the hall, "you said we have no weapons, but look out those windows. What do you see?" People turned. Through the large windows they could see the parking area behind the hall. Massive combine harvesters sat in rows, their blades gleaming in the afternoon light. Beyond them, tractors, sprayers, and heavy equipment filled the yards. "We've got more hardware than most people think," continued. "We've got machines that can cut through dense brush, lift tons of weight, and work for days without stopping. We've got drones that can fly in formations and spray entire fields in minutes. We've got chemicals that can kill insects or burn away weeds. We've got tools that were made for farming, but tools can be used for other things." A murmur ran through the crowd. Felt something shift in the room, like the change in air pressure before a storm. "You're talking about fighting them," said slowly, "with farming equipment." "I'm talking about not dying quietly," replied. "I'm talking about making them pay for every inch of our soil. Maybe we lose. Probably we lose. But at least we go down swinging, and maybe we hurt them enough that they think twice before raiding the next farming world." A farmer named John Torres stood up. He was a big man with calloused hands and a quiet way of speaking. My combine can cut through ironwood trees if I push it hard enough. Armor can't be tougher than ironwood. I can reprogram the crop dusters, said a young woman recognized as one of the agricultural drone operators. They've got sophisticated navigation systems. If we load them with something other than fertilizer, they could drop it wherever we tell them to. More people started standing, offering skills and ideas. The mechanic who maintained the harvesters said he could reinforce them with hull plating from the old landing shuttles. A chemist who worked in the processing plant mentioned that some of the industrial cleaners they used could burn through metal. A retired explosives expert who had worked in mining said the fertilizer they used could be mixed into something much more dangerous. Looked at, she gave him a small nod. All right, said, his voice cutting through the excited chatter. If we're doing this, we do it smart. We have 3 days. I want you as my second in command. You know tactics better than anyone here. We need to organize everyone into groups. Some will modify the equipment. Some will prepare the defenses. Some will train. Stepped up onto the stage beside him. We're fighting on our ground, she said. We know every field, every irrigation ditch, every storage building. They don't. We use that. We make them come to us through places we choose. We turn our home into a trap. The meeting lasted 3 more hours. They divided the colonists into teams. The mechanics and engineers would weaponize the farm equipment. The younger generation, who had grown up running maintenance programs and repair simulations, would handle the technical work on the drones and targeting systems. The hunters who knew how to track the local wildlife would become snipers. Everyone else would dig trenches, set traps, and prepare the settlements for war. Organized them into 3 main groups. The harvesters would operate the heavy machinery. The swarm would control the drone fleet. The trappers would handle ambushes and sabotage. He knew it sounded ridiculous. Farmers against trained warriors. Tractors against war machines. But ridiculous was better than surrender. That night, New Harvest transformed. The welding torches burned until dawn. The machine shops never closed. Engineers stripped hull plating from every old shuttle and transport in the salvage yards, bolting the armor onto combines and tractors. They reinforced the blades, upgraded the engines, and installed roll cages. The massive harvesters started to look less like farm equipment and more like mechanical monsters. The drone operators worked in teams, reprogramming the crop dusters. The agricultural drones were designed to fly in perfect formations, spraying precise amounts of chemicals onto specific areas. Now they would spray something different. The chemists worked frantically to create mixtures that would eat through armor. They tested formulas on metal plates, watching the compounds burn and corrode. In the fields, the trappers were busy. They flooded low areas where they might try to advance, turning solid ground into mud. They scattered caltrops made from sharpened plow blades across likely approach routes. They rigged grain silos with remote detonators, packing them with volatile fertilizer compounds. The old mining expert showed them how to create pressure triggers that would detonate when vehicles passed over them. Barely slept. He walked from work site to work site, checking progress, answering questions, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Late on the second night, found him sitting alone on a combine, staring up at the stars where the ships waited. Having doubts, she asked, climbing up to sit beside him. We're farmers, we grow food, we take care of animals, we're not soldiers. No, she agreed, but we're not helpless either. You know what makes humans dangerous? We adapt. Give us any tool and we'll figure out how to use it. Give us any problem and we'll find a solution. To think they're raiding another weak farming colony, they have no idea what's waiting for them. And if we lose? Shrugged, then we lose, but we'll make them remember us. Every that hears the story will think twice before attacking farmers again. On the morning of the 3rd day, the colonists of New Harvest stood ready. The combines were armed and armored. The drones hummed in their charging stations. The traps were set. The snipers took their positions in the grain silos and water towers. They began their descent, cutting through the atmosphere like falling stars. They landed in the fields outside Haven's Rest, their ramps dropping open to release squads of reptilian warriors in dark combat armor. They moved with confidence, weapons ready, expecting terrified civilians. Instead, they found a battlefield. The first squad waded into a field that looked like any other. Their feet sank into mud. Hidden caltrops punctured their boots. Then the pressure mines detonated, and the morning filled with thunder and fire. Stood in the control center they had set up in the administration building, watching the feeds from surveillance cameras. He pressed the radio button. "All units," he said calmly, "the harvest begins." The warriors scattered after the mine blasts, their tight formations breaking apart. They had trained for assaults on fortified positions, for urban combat, for shipboarding actions. They had not trained for agricultural warfare. The swarm launched first. 500 crop-dusting drones rose from concealed positions across the settlement, their electric motors nearly silent. They moved in coordinated waves. Their programming changed from precision agriculture to precision attack. The first wave dove toward the forces, releasing clouds of industrial solvent mixed with chemical accelerants. They had good armor. It was designed to stop bullets, deflect energy weapons, and protect against shrapnel. It was not designed for what humans used to strip paint from shuttles and clean industrial machinery. The chemicals splashed across armor plates and started eating through the protective coating. Within seconds, warriors were screaming, tearing at their suits as the compounds found gaps and weak points. The second wave of drones came in lower, targeting this communication equipment. Electromagnetic pulse generators, normally used to restart stubborn farming equipment, had been overcharged and mounted on the larger drones. The pulses knocked out radios and targeting systems. Squads lost contact with each other and with their ships in orbit. From his position in a grain silo, John Torres watched the chaos through his hunting rifle's scope. The rifle was designed to bring down thornbacks, massive six-legged animals that could weigh 3 tons and had hides thick enough to turn small-caliber rounds. The officers, marked by different colored armor, made easy targets at 300 meters. Torres breathed out slowly and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked hard against his shoulder. Downrange, a captain dropped, his chest plate cracked by the high-velocity round. "One down," Torres muttered into his radio. Around New Harvest, 15 other snipers were doing the same thing, picking off leaders and heavy weapon operators. They tried to advance toward Haven's Rest, but the terrain worked against them. Irrigation ditches that the farmers crossed every day became obstacles. Hidden trenches collapsed under the weight of armored soldiers. The approaches the aliens chose, the ones that looked easiest, were exactly where the trappers had placed their surprises. A squad pushed toward the main road, thinking the paved surface would offer stable ground. They made it 50 meters before the road itself erupted. The trappers had spent 2 days carefully excavating beneath the asphalt and placing shaped charges. The explosion tore a crater 30 feet wide and sent warriors flying. Then the harvesters entered the battle. Sat in the cab of her combine, her hands steady on the controls. The machine had been her workplace for 10 years. She knew every sound it made, every vibration, every quirk in the steering. Now, covered in salvaged shuttle armor and with its blades reinforced with tungsten carbide, it had become something new. She pushed the throttle forward. The combine's engine roared, a deep growl that sounded like controlled thunder. The machine rolled forward, picking up speed, its massive treads chewing up the dirt road. Behind her, 9 more combines advanced in a wedge formation. They saw them coming and opened fire. Energy bolts splashed against the armored cabs. Bullets sparked off the reinforced treads, but the combines didn't stop. They were built to push through dense crops, to muscle through tough terrain, to keep working when other machines would fail. Weapons fire didn't slow them down. Crashed into the line like a metal avalanche. The rotating blades at the front of her combine, designed to cut wheat and corn, cut through warriors with the same efficient indifference. Armor plating meant nothing. The aliens tried to scatter, but the other combines were already among them, their blades whirling, their heavy frames crushing anything in their path. A warrior managed to jump onto's cab, trying to smash through the reinforced windows with his rifle butt. Didn't panic. She had dealt with stuck machinery, with broken equipment, with emergencies in the middle of harvest season. She triggered the emergency chaff dispersal system, modified to spray burning lubricant. The screamed and fell off, rolling in the dirt. Harvesters pushed them toward Grid 7's voice crackled over the radio. Trappers, be ready. Adjusted her course, herding the fleeing toward an orchard on the eastern edge of Haven's Rest. The other combines followed her lead, working together like they had done 1,000 times during harvest. They ran, probably thinking they could use the trees for cover. The orchard had been prepared. The trappers had spent a full day weakening tree trunks with careful cuts, then rigging them with cables and pulleys. As they rushed between the trees, the trappers triggered their traps. Cables pulled, and massive trees toppled in sequence, crushing warriors beneath tons of wood and fruit. By mid-morning, Warlord realized he was not fighting a simple raid. He was in a real battle, and he was losing. From his command, he watched his warriors fall back in disorder. 300 of his fighters were dead or wounded. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had attacked with coordination and tactics. All units fall back to the landing zone, ordered. His officers looked at him in shock. They did not retreat. They advanced until they won or died trying, but had not survived 73 conquests by being stupid. These humans were different. The withdrawal was not the orderly retreat of trained soldiers. It was close to panic. They had come expecting easy prey and found predators. The combines pursued them across the fields, their blades still spinning. The drones harassed them from above. The snipers picked off stragglers. Watched from the command center, barely believing what he was seeing. They had hurt them badly, but he knew this wasn't over. Still had thousands of warriors in orbit, and now he would be angry. "How are our casualties?" he asked Sarah. 17 injured, 3 serious, she reported. No deaths. Nodded slowly. They had been incredibly lucky, but luck wouldn't hold forever. That afternoon, joined in the command center. They studied maps of New Harvest, marking where they expected the next attack to come. "He'll come with everything next time," said. "Every warrior, every vehicle. He can't afford another humiliation." "Can we stop a full assault?" "Maybe, if we're smart and very lucky," pointed to the map. "They'll come straight up the main road. It's the fastest route. We need to turn it into a killing ground." They worked through the night, preparing the final defense. The combines were refueled and repositioned. The drones were recharged. The trappers set up their largest surprise yet. Every grain silo surrounding Haven's Rest was packed with fertilizer-based explosives, arranged in a sequence that would create a cascading chain of detonations. It was dangerous. If something went wrong, they could blow up their own settlement. But they needed something big enough to break a full assault. The colonists worked with grim determination. They were exhausted, covered in dirt and grease, running on adrenaline and stubborn pride. But nobody quit. Nobody suggested surrender. They had proven they could fight. Now they would prove they could win. Young people who had never done anything more dangerous than repair a tractor were now loading chemical weapons onto drones. Teachers were helping dig firing positions. The doctor who ran the small clinic was preparing triage areas for the wounded. Everyone had a job. Everyone contributed. Made rounds through the settlement, checking on people, offering encouragement. He found a group of teenagers programming drones, their faces pale with exhaustion. "Get some sleep," he told them. "We need you sharp tomorrow." "Governor," one of them said, a girl named Maya who couldn't have been more than 17. "Do you think we can really win?" looked at her tired face and decided she deserved the truth. I don't know, but I know we've already done something nobody thought was possible. We hurt them today. Tomorrow we'll hurt them worse. That's all we can do. Maya nodded and went back to work. Dawn came too quickly. They descended again, but this time there were dozens of them. They landed in formation, and thousands of warriors poured out, supported by armored walkers and flying gunships. Was throwing everything he had at them. Stood on the roof of the administration building, watching the assemble. It looked like a black tide, a mass of warriors that would wash over Haven's Rest and crush everything in its path. Stood beside him, her old rifle in her hands. "Beautiful morning for a fight," she said calmly. "You're insane," replied, but he was smiling. "Maybe, but we're all insane here. That's what makes us dangerous." They began their advance. They moved more carefully this time, spreading out, watching for traps. Their walkers, 10-foot-tall machines with heavy weapons, led the way. Their gunships circled overhead, ready to provide air support. Waited until they were committed, pushing down the main road in a massive column. He waited until they were surrounded by the grain silos. He waited until his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Then he pressed the detonator. The world became fire and thunder. The grain silos exploded in sequence, each blast triggering the next. The concussive force rolled across the battlefield like a physical wave. Warriors were thrown into the air. Walkers toppled sideways. The gunships, caught by the shockwave, spun out of control and crashed. In the chaos, the harvesters charged. Led them, her combine roaring forward through the smoke and flames. Behind her, every piece of heavy equipment New Harvest possessed followed. Tractors, logging machines, excavators, all of them modified and armored, all of them driven by farmers who refused to lose their home. The swarm descended like locusts. 500 drones attacked in coordinated patterns, their programming allowing them to move like a single organism. They targeted weapons, sensors, anything that looked important. Some drones were shot down, spinning into the ground, but there were always more. The battle became a confused melee. Warriors fired wildly, hitting each other as often as they hit the colonists. The colonists fought with desperate efficiency, using every dirty trick they had learned. When a walker advanced on a combine, farmers with plasma torches used for controlled burns rushed in and cut through the walker's leg joints. When tried to flank the main defense, they ran into prepared positions where hunters with rifles waited. High above, in orbit, the ship commanders saw massive energy signatures blooming across their sensors. They thought the humans had called in reinforcements, that warships had arrived. In reality, they were detecting the electromagnetic chaos from thousands of active drones and overloaded equipment. But they didn't know that. Already humiliated by the battle, afraid of facing an actual military fleet, they began preparing to retreat. On the ground, Warlord refused to accept defeat. He had built his reputation on conquest and domination. He would not let farmers destroy everything he had achieved. He donned his ceremonial power armor, a massive suit decorated with the symbols of his victories, and strode into the battle. The armor made him 8 feet tall and strong enough to tear steel. Energy shields shimmered around him. His weapon, a plasma cannon built into his left arm, could vaporize a man with a single shot. He had worn this armor when he conquered the fortress worlds of and broke the defense stations of 442. Now he would use it to kill these insolent humans. Marched through the smoke, his warriors rallying around him when they saw their leader joining the fight. He fired his cannon at a combine, blowing its front end apart in a burst of superheated plasma. The driver bilated out just before the machine exploded, roared his triumph and advanced toward Haven's Rest. Saw him coming through the camera feeds. He recognized the ornate armor from intelligence reports. That was himself. If they killed him, the would collapse. "I'm going out there," said. "That's suicide," protested. "He's in battle armor. You don't have anything that can touch him." "Yes, I do. headed for the door. Keep the drones on him. Don't let him reach the residential area. Ran through the streets of Haven's Rest toward the industrial zone on the settlement's edge. There, covered by camouflage netting, sat a logging mech. It was a 20-foot-tall machine designed to clear the ironwood forests that New Harvest's colonists had planted for lumber. It could lift full-grown trees and cut through trunks 4 feet thick. Had never operated one before, but he had watched the logging crews work. He climbed into the cab and powered up the mech. The machine rose to its full height, servos whining. The plasma chainsaw mounted on its right arm sputtered to life, the cutting chain glowing orange-hot. Took a deep breath and marched the mech toward the battle. Saw him coming and laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. A human in a worker machine. You think you can challenge me? Didn't answer. He pushed the mech forward, its heavy feet shaking the ground, fired his plasma cannon. The bolt hit the mech's chest, scorching the armor but not penetrating, kept advancing. They crashed together like titans. Armor was faster, but the logging mech was heavier and designed to work in dangerous conditions. When tried to dodge, swung the mech's left arm, a massive hydraulic gripper meant for carrying logs. It caught shoulder and squeezed. The warlord's shields flared and failed. The gripper dented his armor, fired his plasma cannon point-blank into the mech's torso. Alarms shrieked in the cab as systems failed, smelled smoke and burning insulation. He triggered the chainsaw and brought it down in a brutal overhead strike, raised his arms to block, and the plasma-heated chain tore through his left arm's armor. The cannon sparked and went dead, roared in pain and fury. They grappled metal against metal, both machines damaged and barely functioning. Controls were sluggish, half the hydraulics shot. Armor was cracked and leaking fluids. Around them the battle continued, but in this small space it was just the two of them. "Surrender," grated out, his voice amplified by the mech's external speakers. "Your ships are retreating. Your warriors are broken. It's over." "Never," tried to break free, but the logging mech's gripper held firm. "I am Warlord. I have conquered 73 worlds." "You conquered armies," said. He pushed the mech forward, forcing down. The warlord's armor whined in protest as the mech's weight pressed him into the dirt. "We're not an army. We're farmers. We grow things. We build things. We take care of our home, and we don't let anyone take that from us." Positioned the mech's foot on its chest plate. One more push and the armor would collapse, crushing the warlord inside. "Do it," shouted. "Kill me." Paused, he thought about what it said. They weren't soldiers, they were farmers. They didn't kill unless they had to. "No," said. "You surrender right here, right now. You order your warriors to stand down. You leave New Harvest and never come back. Or I end this and your warriors can explain to the Confederation how their mighty warlord was killed by a logging machine." The silence stretched out. Around them the sounds of battle were fading. The colonists were winning. They were in full retreat, running for their. Finally his voice came through, smaller now, defeated. "I surrender." Kept the pressure on his armor as he radioed back to command. "Tell all units to cease fire. The warlord has surrendered. Get medical teams ready for wounded, ours and theirs." The battle ended not with a final explosion, but with exhausted quiet. The guns stopped firing. The drones returned to their charging stations. The combines shut down their engines. Colonists emerged from defensive positions, looking around at the battlefield in stunned disbelief. They had won. Against experienced warriors with superior weapons, against a that had conquered dozens of worlds, the farmers of New Harvest had won. Climbed out of the damaged mech and dropped to the ground. His legs shook from adrenaline, was there to steady him. "You crazy bastard," she said, but she was smiling. "You actually beat him." "We beat him," corrected, "all of us." They took and the surviving warriors prisoner. There weren't many left. Out of the thousands who had landed, less than 800 were still combat capable, and most of those were wounded. The ships in orbit sent frantic transmissions demanding negotiations, suddenly very worried about their warlord's safety. Was too tired to deal with them immediately. He walked through Haven's Rest, checking on his people. The casualties were surprisingly light. 53 wounded, only 8 seriously. 3 dead, farmers who had taken direct hits during the final assault. Their names were Maria Santos, David, and Robert. Made sure to remember them. The settlement was damaged but not destroyed. Buildings could be repaired. Equipment could be rebuilt. They had saved their home. 3 weeks later, the human navy arrived in system. The fleet commander, Admiral Jessica Torres, John Torres' sister, came down to the surface expecting to find a disaster. Instead, she found New Harvest's colonists repairing their combines and replanting their fields. Met her in what was left of the administration building. He was covered in dirt and grease, having spent the morning helping repair a damaged tractor. "Governor," Admiral Torres said, looking around in confusion, "we received your distress signal. Where are the—" "In the detention center," replied. "What's left of them? We're holding them for trial. I've got about 800 prisoners who are going to need transport." The admiral stared at him. "You fought them with what?" Gestured toward the window where a battered combine was rolling past. "With what we had." The story spread across human space like wildfire. The feared raiders who had terrorized the frontier for a generation had been defeated by farmers with tractors and crop dusters. The Confederation, humiliated beyond measure, officially disbanded and recalled all raiding parties. Warlord was tried by his own people for incompetence and stripped of rank. Other species took notice. Humanity, that strange species that could turn anything into a weapon, had shown once again why they were dangerous. It wasn't their technology or their military. It was their adaptability, their stubborn refusal to give up, their ability to look at a problem and find a solution no one else would consider. Farming worlds across the sector started receiving offers for military aid, but most declined. If New Harvest could defend itself, so could they. Within a year, agricultural colonies were forming their own defense forces, training with modified equipment, sharing tactics. The farmers' militia became a real thing, respected and feared. On New Harvest, life slowly returned to normal. The wheat still needed planting. The animals still needed tending. The crops still needed harvesting. But now, when the combines moved through the fields, everyone who saw them remembered what they could do. Retired from her role as militia commander and went back to farming. She preferred it that way. But twice a year, she led training exercises, making sure the colonists remembered their lessons, just in case. Remained governor, but he added a new title, commander of the New Harvest Defense Force. It sounded official, but really it just meant he was responsible for maintaining the equipment and keeping the training schedules organized. He didn't mind. It was still better than being conquered. The human navy built a small base on New Harvest, just a communication station and a rapid response team. The colonists tolerated it. They knew the navy meant well. But everyone understood that if trouble came again, the real defense would come from the people who lived on this world and worked its soil. A monument was erected in the center of Haven's Rest. It was simple, a piece of salvaged combine blade mounted on a stone base. 3 names were carved into the stone, the colonists who had died defending their home. Below the names, a simple inscription. "They came for our harvest, we gave them steel." On clear nights, sometimes stood by the monument and looked up at the stars. He thought about the ships that had come and been defeated. He thought about the colonists who had transformed their farm equipment into weapons of war. He thought about what it meant to be human, to take what you had and make it enough. Somewhere out there, other species were learning the same lesson. Humans were dangerous not because they were warriors by nature, but because they could become warriors when needed. They were dangerous because they adapted, because they improvised, because they looked at a farming tool and saw a weapon. They were dangerous because they were human, and humans simply did not give up. The next morning woke early as always. The twin suns rose over the fields, painting the wheat gold and amber. The combines were already moving, their engines humming, cutting through the crops in long, straight rows. It was harvest season again, and there was work to be done. Poured himself coffee and stood on his porch, watching the machines work. They were just combines again, doing what they were built for. But he knew, and everyone on New Harvest knew, that if the need arose, they could be something more. The harvest continued. Life continued. And in the fields of New Harvest, the humans who had turned their farm equipment into an army went back to growing food, secure in the knowledge that they could protect what they had built. Because that's what humans did. They adapted, they survived, they won. And they never, ever gave up their harvest without a fight.